Red Dead Redemption 1, a game that has just released on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, well, I say PlayStation 5, but technically just PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. And in today's video, we're going to be focusing on Nintendo Switch. We'll be doing a review of the game on Nintendo Switch, all about Red Dead Redemption 1. Now, of course, on the Switch, they've never really, of course, I mean, Nintendo players in general have never really been the ones that get lots and lots of Rockstar Games. But we do, of course, have Red Dead Redemption, and we did get the GTA trilogy about, what was it, about getting on for 2 years ago now. Pretty mental. So, yeah, today's video will be focusing on Red Dead Redemption. And first of all, we'll just talk about the price, everything like that. Then we'll talk about how it plays and whether it is worth picking up if you are a Switch player. So, let's waste no more time and let's get straight into the video. So, in terms of pricing, now, first of all, the game isn't available physically yet. It is available, there will be a physical edition of the game on Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4, which of course can be played on PS5 as well, on October 13th. And that's probably when the game will slightly go down in price a bit, since usually, of course, well, by October time, you'd hope there have been some digital sales. And also, the physical editions are always slightly cheaper these days, especially since you can get them used and everything like that. So, if you do find the price too high at the moment, then there's always the option of waiting for the physical edition. But we'll talk about that later on when we talk about whether it's worth buying. So, in terms of getting it right now, it is available on the Nintendo eShop for £40 or $50. So, whilst that is a high price for a game that hasn't really changed and is literally the same as before with no real improvements, for Nintendo Switch, that's not that high. Now, first of all, the game wasn't actually on Nintendo Switch before, so this is new to the Nintendo platform. And usually Nintendo games come in at high prices because, especially when it comes to Nintendo exclusives, they're not available anywhere else. So, of course, Nintendo can keep their prices high since there is no competition. There's no reason for them to lower the prices since people have no option other than to buy it, since, you know, there's no other way of buying the game. There's no cheap way of getting the game since that's the only platform the game is available on. So you could sort of say that the price is more understandable on Nintendo Switch rather than the consoles, but at the same time, of course, the experience isn't going to be as good as on consoles, so you could argue that it should be cheaper because the graphics aren't going to be as good and the frame rate might not be quite as consistent. So there's arguments both ways, but I don't think £40 for a game on Nintendo Switch, considering the prices of some other games on the platform, I don't think that's too bad of a price, but it certainly could be cheaper. I think £35 would have been a much more fair price. Just that little bit lower, I think, would really help. For example, games like The Witcher 3, I believe that's about £30 when it came to the Nintendo Switch. I think that's a fair price, and I think that would be a fair price over on the consoles as well. To have sort of that £30–35 price across the board, I think is a really fair price. But to be fair, you know, I won't complain that much since it's only about £5 more than what I am suggesting. So either way, yeah, I don't think the price is extortionate, but it's certainly not cheap by any means. So yeah, you can buy this game now. It came out on the day I'm recording this and the day this video will be releasing, the 17th of August. And yeah, it is available on the Nintendo eShop. The game is 11.7 gigs, so not too bad to be fair. And yeah, so with this, you aren't getting the multiplayer, unfortunately. It would have been really cool to see some sort of Red Dead Online on Nintendo Switch. That would have been so cool, but unfortunately that's not the case. You are getting, to be fair, you do get the Undead Nightmare with this, but yeah, so you're getting the base game of Red Dead Redemption and Undead Nightmare. It's basically the Game of the Year edition of the game, but just without the multiplayer content, which is the disappointing part, to be fair. That would have been so cool to see over on Nintendo Switch, but unfortunately we won't. But yeah, so yeah, you are just getting Red Dead Redemption, basically just that and Undead Nightmare, which isn't too bad. Of course, are both great games. And yeah, so now let's talk about how it does perform and how it looks over on Nintendo Switch. Now, in this video, I'm not going to be doing a full comparison, a detailed side-by-side comparison of the graphics compared to PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. That's not the idea of this video. There's so many of those videos already out. But I'm going to talk about the graphics. Now, the gameplay you've been seeing on screen is Nintendo Switch gameplay of Red Dead Redemption. And to be honest, it doesn't look that bad. Now, I have actually done a video on this channel regarding The Witcher 3 on Nintendo Switch. I'll link that video in the description below, where I basically, yeah, review the game for the Switch. Now, what I always say when I'm reviewing games for the Switch is that the games always look better when they are in handheld mode, because generally speaking, the resolution will stay the same whether it's in handheld mode or not, since it's usually not 1080p. So if you have it in handheld mode, of course, you're getting the smaller display, which means that if it is a lower resolution, it's harder to be able to see those pixels since it's a much smaller screen. So I always believe that realistically the best way to play the game is in handheld mode, since it's harder to notice the downgrade in graphics. And of course, it's not going to look as good as the game on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and the Xbox consoles, which of course you're going to expect no matter what, really, since it isn't a, it's a Nintendo Switch. First of all, it's a much older console, and it is also less powerful since it's much smaller, and also a handheld console. So yeah, I always suggest playing the game in handheld mode, because that is simply going to be where you don't notice the downgrading graphics as much. But of course, if you want to play this in docked mode, then by all means do that. It's not going to be a bad experience. Now, something I find really interesting is that because this is a newer version of the game than it is on the Series X, for example, I actually believe that in some areas the lighting and overall graphics look slightly better than on Xbox Series X. And of course, the Xbox Series X doesn't have that new version developed by Double 11 Studios. It's just got the old version of Red Dead Redemption, the original version, just of course using backwards compatibility to be able to play it at 4K on the newer consoles, just through the normal Xbox features. But I do think that on Nintendo Switch, the game actually looks and feels really, really nice. Of course, you're getting 30 frames per second, and that 30 frames is pretty consistent. I've not really experienced any sort of drops in frame rate. I think it is really, really nice, and to be honest, it doesn't really feel that different in terms of playing the game compared to PlayStation 4, since now I haven't played it on PlayStation 4 to be fair, but compared to PS5 it actually doesn't feel any different either, since the frame rate is slightly less consistent. But at the end of the day, they're both 30 frames. The only real difference that I've found is the resolution of the game. Of course, you're not getting 4K on Nintendo Switch, but you are getting that 30 frames, which is the exact same as PlayStation 5, since there's no next gen version of the game. So yeah, I don't think the graphics are bad at all, and to be honest, I think it's quite impressive how well the game runs and feels and looks on Nintendo Switch, since realistically it doesn't look bad at all. It just looks like Red Dead Redemption. It doesn't look that much worse than it used to look. Well, it doesn't look worse than it used to look at all. The only difference is of course that resolution, and yeah, the frame rate's fine. You would expect 30 frames on Nintendo Switch. I've never complained about that, and the graphics I think look good, to be honest. For a Nintendo Switch game, I think they look very, very good. So now let's really talk about whether it's worth playing on Nintendo Switch and worth buying. So first of all, let's talk about it from the perspective of a Nintendo Switch player. Let's say that you have always played on Nintendo consoles, you've never really played on a different type of console, and you don't have a PC, and so you've never really experienced Rockstar Games before. So, if you haven't played Red Dead Redemption and you only have a Nintendo Switch, then I would 100% recommend picking the game up, and I think for £40 it's not that bad of a deal, considering Red Dead Redemption and Undead Nightmare are really, really good. The story is amazing, and it is a really great game. There's no complaints. The actual game itself is very, very good. The price, of course, slightly higher, but for Nintendo Switch, if you always play on Nintendo Switch, then to be honest, you're probably used to that by now. Every game on Nintendo Switch is overpriced in my opinion, so I really don't think it's that bad of a deal over on the Switch side of things. When it comes to the PS4 and everything like that, it's a different story, but on Nintendo Switch, I don't think it's that bad of a deal. So if you want to play the game on Nintendo Switch, you don't have access to any other consoles, then it's definitely worth picking up and definitely worth playing. One of the must-haves in my opinion now on Nintendo Switch after its release. So I really recommend it if you've never played the game before. Now, if you want to play the game in handheld mode, then of course go for it, since it is quite literally basically the only way to do that. There's no real other option for playing Red Dead Redemption in handheld mode. You can't get it on PC, so it's not available on the Steam Deck or anything like that. So if you're on the go a lot, let's say you travel a lot and you want to play Red Dead Redemption for the first time or again, then of course this is a great way to do so. In handheld mode, I think is an even better experience than in docked mode, so I really, really recommend playing it. And of course the controls are fine. Obviously, we got with the GTA trilogy, the remaster, we did get improved controls, and the controls for Red Dead have stayed the same as before, but they were already fine. They're the exact same as Red Dead Redemption 2, so no complaints there. So yeah, if you travel a lot and you want to play it in handheld mode, then that is absolutely a great option. But if you have access to other consoles, you don't really use your Switch much, it makes no sense to get it on Nintendo Switch, since it's either the same price or cheaper if you're on Xbox to get it elsewhere, and you are going to get slightly better graphics, and of course you are going to get slightly more consistent frame rates. But other than that, to be honest, the versions are the exact same. At the end of the day, it's Red Dead Redemption 1. If you like Red Dead Redemption 1, you've never played it before, or you want to play it again after not playing it for a while, or maybe let's say you play it all the time and you just want to be able to experience that new version, then it's definitely worth picking up. But if you think the price is just a little bit too high, which is fair enough, then it's always worth waiting for a digital sale, or wait until those physical releases have started to come out, and then it does drop down in price a bit from there. But either way, I have no complaints regarding the Nintendo Switch version, to be honest, since at the end of the day, it's nice for it to be on Nintendo Switch. Of course, the other versions of the game on PlayStation are disappointing, but when it comes to the Switch, I really don't think it's bad at all, and I think it is pretty good, and if you're on a Switch, it's worth picking up. And yeah, that does just about wrap up things here. That is my review of Red Dead Redemption on Nintendo Switch. Now, in terms of reviewing the game, I don't need to do that. The game is outstanding. It's a 10 out of 10. Definitely don't worry about the game itself not being good. You won't be disappointed. But yeah, that does just about wrap up things here. Now, on screen now, you are seeing a link to a different video. Hit the link on the screen if you are interested in watching that.